early on in my digging, I came upon a quote from Abraham Maslow. And he said, the ability to be in the present moment is a major component of mental wellness. And that really caught my attention because it really tied in with Michael Brown. In the process, he talks about how we can move from what he calls physical lethargy and mental clutter and emotional confusion to physical presence, mental clarity, and emotional balance. The first step that Michael Brown talks about is anchoring awareness in our bodies through consciously connected breathing. And obviously this is nothing new. Women and men have been focusing on their breath with meditative practices since the beginning of time. So it's just his take on his experience with that. And he explains that the purpose of anchoring our awareness here in our bodies is to assist us to remain present throughout our day so that we can process all of the different experiences that are coming our way in a conscious way, and we can respond rather than react. So a question might be, what is presence? That surely was a question that I had. And Michael Brown defines it in several ways. He talks about present moment awareness. And first he says it's a state of being. Second, he said that it's not a concept, it's an experience. And I really appreciated that because I've known that I've had these moments of presence, but to be able to explain them to you would be really challenging. So I understood when he said that it's not a concept, it's an experience. And third, to help a little bit more, he said that it's an integration of the body, the mind, and the emotions. And then the fourth piece is a piece I really like. He says that present moment awareness allows us to respond consciously to our experiences. So coming back repeatedly to this whole thing about being able to respond and to respond consciously. Well, besides looking at Brown's work, I also wanted to look at other works, and I wanted to start in the popular press, and so I went to Amazon.com to see who might be writing about and selling about presence, if there would be anything there. And I was really surprised when I opened it up, and at the top of the list there was actually a book called Presence. And I was even more excited because it was written by Peter Senge, and I've really liked Senge's work on the learning organization and on systems thinking. And so when I saw his book, which he co-authored with a real powerhouse of a team, and that would be, his co-authors were Otto Sharma and Joe Jaworski and Betty Sue Flowers. And the title of the book was Presence, Human Purpose and the Field of the Future. And then right under that was an audio book that he wrote 4 years later in 2008 called The Power of Presence, Shifting Your Awareness to Transform Your Business, Your Life, and Our Future. And in there he said that presence is about a sense of profound connection to one another. And that jumps out at me because for me, that's what the whole field of human communication is about, is finding that connection to each other. And I can see why when related to the word presence, it takes it even deeper to a profound sense of connection to each other. And in his book, he spoke about the aspects of presence, which again, I'm digging at what is presence after all. And there were several of them that he talked about, but two I want to mention here. And the first one is being fully conscious and aware in the present moment. So again, that whole thing, reiterating what Brown says, it's about full consciousness in the present moment. And then the second thing that he talked about as an aspect of presence is deep listening. And that was really meaningful to me too, because I realized ever since meeting Sonia Foss and Cindy Griffin's work on invitational rhetoric, that whole piece of the listening side of the communication process is sometimes neglected. So when someone is paying attention to it and talking about how we can develop not only listening but deep listening, I'm actually listening. And so that brings me to the so what question. So what does learning and exploring about presence mean? And the question question that really helps me narrow it down is at NCA in San Francisco. I went to another panel where Rod Troster was presenting, and he's on the faculty at Penn State Behrend in Erie, and he asked the question this way: why should we care about this as communication teachers and as communication scholars? And so that was a takeaway from him for me, as far as always asking, why should I care about this as a teacher and as a scholar? So the first reason that I care about presence and knowing about it and wanting to finally learn how to embody presence takes me back to a quote that I heard many years ago that I've worked real hard to weave into my worldview, and it's from an organization called Four Winds International. And they are dedicated to the preservation of indigenous cultures. And they say this: starting from within, working in a sacred circle, in a sacred manner, we heal and develop ourselves, our relationships, and our world. So it's that whole piece of starting from within, and for me that's what presence and anchoring in the present moment is about, starting from within, starting here at this center. And just to add to that a little bit more, Michael Brown helped me out when he said that when I'm focused on the present moment and I'm living life consciously, that allows me to be truly available and truly useful in my relationships and in my work. So the first piece I think about why it matters to me is learning to experience and embody presence, learning to be here in this present moment allows me to have that deeper connection, or that connection with my students when I dialogue with them, when I'm in the classroom with the teaching and learning moment. And so besides the teaching, I also tell my students that we can't give away what we don't have. And what I mean by that is, an empty well can't provide water to the community, and a well full of polluted water can't provide water to the community. So in order for me to be able to be effective in the classroom, it's part of working on myself, so I am learning physical presence, mental clarity, emotional balance. And then to go with a ripple effect, I start within and then I move out into my community, into my other circles. There's something that Peter Senge said that I love. He said, collective attunement requires individual cultivation. That is so great is great because the individual orchestra members are cultivating their skills and their talents. So in order to have that collective attunement with the organizations that I'm in my classroom, I need to remember to be fine-tuning my own world. Okay, so that's how I came to the research and a little bit about the topic of presence and how I see that it relates to our field of communication. But when I really got excited about the topic was when I actually arrived in San Francisco for the NCA convention. There was another synchronicity that occurred, which was really fascinating to me, because I started off with these synchronicities that kind of called me into looking at this concept or this experience of presence, and then at the end I had this great big synchronicity to really, I guess, kind of sink it in and encourage me to keep going and keep looking at it deeper and understanding it better. So I was staying at the City Zen Center, and when I arrived in San Francisco, I was walking on over and I was climbing up this big hill to the center carrying my heavy bags, and right across the street on the corner was this place called Samovar, and it said that it was a tea lounge, and I never experienced a tea lounge, so that caught my attention, and it also said that it served food, and I was really hungry, so I was excited to drop off my bags and head across the street. And on my way over, I thought I was going to a quiet, private, contemplative meal. But I was in for a really big surprise, because first, when I arrived, they seated me at the counter, and so I was immediately in the center of all the action. And then shortly after I was served this platter of beautiful food, this young man, his name was Eric, started up a conversation with me. And I discovered that he was the manager on duty for the restaurant. And I didn't tell him much about me. I told him that I was there for a convention. I did not give him one hint of what my topic was. I told him that I taught at Clemson, and then he went into telling me about his experience with college and what his take is on the whole learning process. And then he really wanted to talk about the restaurant. And again, he was so enthusiastic, and he just loved working at this place. Come to find out that the company's sole purpose is to create positive human connections. And so very fun that it tied into my topic that he didn't know about, and that I was on my way to this great big gigantic convention at NCA that was all about connections. And so he told me about the boss, Jesse Jacobs, and how much he has inspired him in his personal and professional life, and how he has really grown because of working there. And it was just so fascinating listening to how alive and enthusiastic he was about his work and things he was learning, and the people he worked with and the customers. And then at a certain point, he leaned on the counter and he looked me square in the eyes and he said, "And you know what the most important thing is? Presence." And my whole body turned into goosebumps. And it was everything I could do to not interrupt him and say, "Eric, you have no idea how important what you just said is." But instead, I felt more inspired to just be still and really continue to receive the message that he was giving me. Because I don't know when the last time was you were in a restaurant and someone said to you the most important thing is presence. And he just went on to say that when we're with people, it's really important to fully be with them, to do our best to stop the mental clutter, to turn our cell phones off. He's a really big fan of not silencing cell phones, but actually turning them off, to consciously not being entertained by the distractions around us, and to be fully with that person whom we're with. And then he said that not only did he learn about presence and the importance of presence from the serving of tea, which is their company's way of connecting humans, is through the ritual of sharing the tea, but he learned it from his yoga teacher. And I thought again, how fascinating that here he is telling me that he learned about presence from yoga, which would be focusing on anchoring the breath and noticing the flow of breath in the body, and then anchoring us in that present moment. And then he took it even further when he said that his yoga teacher said this to him: "Eric, it's not all about doing good yoga here in class. It's about doing good yoga all day outside of these doors in your daily life." And I think for me, that is kind of the key, or maybe more than kind of, it is the key, that the purpose of experiencing presence is it allows us to move again in a conscious, responsible way in our daily lives.